This story is titled, "My Parents Are Not Helping to Pay My Son's Medical Bills, Who Died While They Were Secretly Helping My Brother." But now, karma's hitting them hard, and they totally deserve it. I was barely 10 years old when my parents, Will and Sally, started leaving my younger brother, William, at home with me. We didn't have much, and they worked all day to earn a living. Every day, they left the house at 6 in the morning. They told me that they had prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they gave me instructions on how to take care of my brother. Every night, they returned at 10, sat down to a cold dinner, and listened to my report on how the day had gone. By the time I was 12, they stopped preparing lunch and dinner before going to work. By the time I was 14, I was responsible for cooking all the meals, washing the clothes, and sweeping the house, all while taking care of William. I loved my parents, and I understood that they had to work. Taking care of William was not a burden, because he was my younger brother. But those responsibilities robbed me of my childhood. They also robbed me of the opportunity to have friends. Whenever my classmates invited me out, there was always some chore waiting for me at home. Eventually, they stopped inviting me. It was especially hard in high school. By that time, my parents sat me down and told me that it was time for me to get a job to help with the bills and the needs of the house. They reminded me of the many sacrifices they had made to pay for my education up to that point and said it was time to lighten their load. As I said, I loved my parents and understood their financial situation. I was glad to assist. However, any social life I had disappeared completely. The little free time I had left was dedicated to studying in order to catch up academically. I worked hard to obtain a university scholarship because I could not afford to slow down. Fortunately, my efforts paid off. I went to university with a full scholarship. Even then, my parents expected me to send them money. I had to work not only to pay my own bills, but also to help them with theirs. My university experience was basically a repeat of my earlier school years. No friends, strange hours, and sleepless nights. By the time I finished university, I had no real friends. When I left school, the first resolution I made was to make friends, true friends. By a stroke of luck, I got a job right after graduating. And for once, it wasn't a waitressing job. My parents were excited because it meant I could send them more money. I was excited because I would no longer have to stand for long hours. True to my resolution, when my coworkers asked me out, I practically screamed, yes. It was during those first outings that I met my husband, Alex. He wasn't exactly a coworker, but a friend of one of them. However, he was the easiest person to talk to and accepted my few words after work. Alex finally asked me out on a date. After 6 months of dating, he proposed to me, and I said yes. My parents argued that it was too soon, but I had never been so sure of anything in my life. Alex was my first and only love, and I couldn't wait to spend the rest of my life with him. It was the best decision I have ever made. On an April morning 6 years ago, I married the love of my life in front of friends and family. Although I was starting my own family, my parents were still expecting the monthly payments they had always received. Fortunately, Alex was understanding and didn't complain. However, when my parents began to imply that they also expected Alex to send them money, I set a limit. It was enough that they expected me to send them money until the day I died, but expecting the same from the person who was in charge of most of our family's expenses was not only absurd, but completely selfish. And what about William? At his age, I was working as a waitress, doing housework, taking care of children, and studying all at the same time. When I pointed this out to my parents, they said, well, the reason you had to work so hard was so that William wouldn't have to. I reminded my parents that the reason they pushed me to work so young was to ease their burden. If they had 2 children, that responsibility should have fallen on both of them. They proceeded to point out what a bad sister I was. For a while, I stopped talking to them. And, of course, I stopped sending them money. If it hadn't been for Alex, we might have continued ignoring them entirely. After my son, Charlie, was born, Alex told me to forgive them and reminded me that they were still my parents. 10 months after the altercation, I gave birth to my son, Charlie. I took one look at his beautiful face and knew I had to make some changes. The first change was the amount of money I sent to my parents. After Charlie was born, I reduced the amount I sent to my parents monthly by 30%. Charlie was my future, and I couldn't sabotage it for my parents. Of course, my decision didn't sit well with them. They tried to argue, but it was a lost battle, and they didn't know it. Little did I know that 5 years later, I would be fired. The company where I worked was reducing staff. It was right after the pandemic, and the country's economy wasn't what it used to be. Many companies were cutting staff, making it difficult to find a new job. Even after months of searching, I had no luck. Alex suggested I become a stay-at-home mom, and I thankfully agreed. When I told my parents there would no longer be monthly checks from me, they didn't complain, but they were clearly upset. Even though a source of income disappeared, Alex, Charlie, and I continued on, stronger than ever. I had everything I needed right in my arms, the two men who owned my heart. Life was good. Until 2 months ago, when my world fell apart. Charlie started feeling weak. He always seemed to be out of breath, and sometimes complained that his heart was beating too fast. Alex and I told him to rest more and stopped him from playing too much. Then, one day, we got a call from Charlie's school saying he had fainted. We ran to the hospital, worried, and the doctor diagnosed him with a heart rhythm disorder called Wolff-Parkinson-White syndrome. From the moment I heard the name, I didn't like it. The doctor said surgery was the only way to treat it. When he mentioned the cost of the surgery, I burst into tears. Alex asked if there was any medicine Charlie could take until we raised the money for the surgery. The doctor gave us a prescription but warned that Charlie needed the surgery as soon as possible. Since then, Alex and I have been doing everything we can to raise the money. Having depleted my savings, including the fund I had started for Charlie's college, I wanted to start looking for a job. But Alex insisted that I focus on taking care of Charlie. Meanwhile, the bills continued to pile up: groceries, household needs, and the cost of Charlie's medications. Alex's family has been incredibly supportive. Sometimes they stock our house with groceries or take care of Charlie. They even paid for half of Charlie's medication last month. And then there's my own family. I haven't heard from William in a long time, ever since he went off to college somewhere in the north. When I told my parents about Charlie's diagnosis, they blurted out empty phrases. Not once have they called to check on us or asked how they could help. Charlie is their grandson, but they treated the news as if he were the son of someone they barely knew. Their insensitivity disgusted me, and I swore never to contact them again. But then, Charlie got worse yesterday. Now he needs that surgery more than ever. I'm thinking of contacting my parents to simply ask them for money. What we have raised is still not enough for the amount we need. Alex doubts they will help us, and I honestly feel the same way. But I have to try. I can't afford it for my little one. Update 1. I come here with an update. I want to start by thanking everyone for the overwhelming support and advice during this very difficult time. Despite all your kind words and suggestions, my news is devastating. I lost my little one. The light and the joy of my life is gone, and I am struggling to accept this unbearable loss. I am having a hard time organizing my thoughts to be able to tell you everything that has happened, but I will do my best, as I want to be able to share it with you. As many of you advised me, I contacted my parents for help. I was hoping that, despite our complicated past, they would put aside our differences and offer their support. But as reality often does, it had other plans. At first, my parents postponed their response, telling me that they needed time to think about it. They stated that they were just getting ahead after they stopped receiving money from a certain person. I didn't bother to respond to their messages. I knew they had no intention of helping us. Even if they had, their half-hearted and conditional offer would have arrived too late. 2 days after asking my parents for help, they sent a text message reiterating their inability to provide financial support. They wrote an empty line about wishing they could help but claimed they had no money available. I deleted the message without bothering to respond. If there had been a way to tear it into pieces, I would have done that too. Looking back, I realize I should have known better than to expect anything from my parents. They have never been there for me when I needed them, and I shouldn't have expected them to change now. But, as a mother desperate to save her son, I held on to the hope that they would finally step forward and be the parents they should have been from the beginning. Now, as I sit here trying to come to terms with the loss of my son, I have to pick up the pieces of my broken heart. I am grateful for the love and support of my husband, Alex, who has been my rock throughout this whole ordeal. Even when I told him that I had communicated with my parents behind his back, he didn't blame me or say, "I told you so." Instead, he just hugged me and told me how sorry he was that we feel pretty lost right now, but I know that one day, somehow, things will be okay. That day seems really, really far away. For now, we're just hugging each other as tight as we can. Update 2. I'm here with another update. I want to start by thanking everyone for your heartfelt condolences. Your messages of comfort haven't stopped coming since Charlie left for a better place, and I must say that they mean the world to me. Charlie was everything to us. This morning, Alex and I decided to cremate him. While most of his ashes were buried in the back garden of Alex's parents' house, we kept a small part with us. It's a small comfort, but having a part of him around makes us feel like he's still here, taking care of us. You won't believe who showed up at the funeral, my parents. I'm still trying to process it. I didn't invite them or send them any information about the event, but somehow they found out and had the audacity to show up. Dressed in black, they pretended to be mourning, as if they really cared. It was as if they thought they could walk in and play the role of loving grandparents. I was furious. I wanted to confront them, to tell them how annoyingly hypocritical it was for them to be there now. How dare they show up and pretend they cared about my son when they refused to help us when we needed them most. But Alex stopped me. He reminded me that Charlie deserved to be sent away in peace, and that the presence of my parents was not worth ruining that moment. So I bit my tongue and walked away. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking they could still provoke me. However, when they dared to approach me to offer their condolences, I turned my back on them and walked away, taking my dignity with me. I'm tired of them. When I needed them, they chose not to be there for me. And now, when it's too late, they want to pretend they care. No. I don't think so. To me, they aren't my parents anymore. They're just two people who share DNA with me. I can never forgive them for what they did, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with acknowledging that our relationship is beyond repair. I'm okay with moving on and focusing on the people who truly care about me and my family. As painful as my parents' betrayal was, William's absence hurt even more. My younger brother didn't even bother to attend the funeral. Not a call, not a message. I sent him countless messages when Charlie was sick. I even told him about the funeral, but he couldn't be bothered to show up or even send a card. Charlie's death made something painfully clear. The people I called family have never seen me the same way I saw them. And it's my fault for expecting so much from them. Update 3. I honestly didn't think I'd be back so soon, but I just made a disturbing discovery, and I'm having a hard time processing it. In the post I made 3 months ago, I mentioned how I hadn't heard from my brother, William, in a long time, and how his absence and lack of communication hurt me even more than the lack of help from my parents. In my mind, I imagined that he was somewhere too busy with work or with friends or something like that. Never in a million years did I imagine the truth that he was hiding, scamming our parents to finance his addiction. Yesterday afternoon, I went to the mall to get out of the house and clear my head. That's when I ran into one of William's school friends, Bob. He was happy to see me, and we started to catch up on the years we had been out of contact. He didn't know about Charlie, and it was honestly a relief to talk to someone who wasn't looking at me with pity or constantly asking me how I was doing. At some point during the conversation, Bob asked about my parents, specifically if they had found a new place to stay. I asked him what he meant. As far as I knew, my parents still lived in the house where they raised William and me. Bob suddenly became uncomfortable and said it wasn't his place to talk about it. That's when I got worried. I refused to let him leave without telling me what he knew. He finally relented and suggested that we discuss it over coffee in the cafeteria. Once we sat down, Bob opened up and told me how he and William started using drugs in college. Both of them dropped out before the second semester of their senior year and moved in together to a house. When the money ran out, they sold their clothes, shoes, and anything else they could get their hands on. But that still wasn't enough to feed their addiction. That's when William had an idea. He convinced a friend to get clean and take some photos afterward. William then sent those photos to my parents, along with a letter claiming that he had met the love of his life in college and had gotten married after graduating. He made up a story about moving in with his wife's parents to take care of them due to their poor health. He told my parents that life was difficult and that he needed their financial support. And my parents believed every word. For over 4 years, they sent money to William every month, funding a fake family. Meanwhile, when I turned to them for help to save my own family, my son, who was sick, they said no. They claimed they didn't have the funds to help me. But that's not even the worst part. William decided that the money my parents were sending wasn't enough. So, he forged my father's signature and sold their house. Yes, you read that right. He sold their house. My parents have been living in a house that is no longer theirs, leaving and returning to a home they don't even own. It's only a matter of time before the new owner comes to claim it. When I told Alex, he was shocked and speechless. Honestly, I can't fully process it either. When I needed my parents to help save my son, they turned me away without hesitation. But they didn't hesitate to finance a family they had never met. And now, they don't even know that they've lost their home. So, that is what I have discovered, and that is why I am sharing it here, because it's too much. Now, I have to decide, should I tell my parents or let them find out on their own? Update 4. Thanks for all the advice and support on what I should do with the information Bob told me about William. To be honest, even with so many suggestions, I still couldn't make a decision until I spoke to Alex about it. My dilemma arose from the fact that, the more I thought about the two options I was considering, letting my parents suffer in ignorance or rubbing in their faces the fact that they had been deceived by their favorite son, the more I felt like I was acting out of revenge. And even though I know I have every right to feel this way, I don't want to be consumed by anger. I have seen what that does to people, and it's something I want to avoid. When I told Alex about my dilemma, he said he understood my feelings. He agreed that both options seemed vindictive on the surface, but he reminded me that I had been deeply wronged. He pointed out that my parents deserved to be confronted for their actions because, after everything I sacrificed for William and them, they were not willing to reciprocate when I needed them most. Alex said something that really stuck with me. We may never know if the money they could have sent would have saved Charlie. But what we do know is that they deliberately turned their backs on our family. They chose not to help at all. He told me that revealing what I had discovered from Bob and confronting my parents about their injustice was not being vindictive, it was simply seeking justice. He then added that leaving them in the dark to face the humiliation of finding out that their favorite child had sold their house might seem vindictive, but it would be an appropriate consequence for their behavior. He even said that they deserved treatment 10 times worse than that. When he said that, it felt like a blurred line suddenly became clear. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was standing up for what was right. This morning, I went to my parents' house. I brought up William and the family they claim he has but never introduced me to. I asked them why they refused to help Charlie when they had no problem financing William's supposed family, a family they don't even know. Their response? They said my brother's family was above mine and that I had money saved because I had stopped sending money to them. I saw red. I was shaking with so much anger that I knew if I didn't leave, I might do something I would regret, something that could cause them physical harm. The fact that I even doubted my decision to confront them, given how cold they are, seemed absurd to me at that moment. Alex was right. They deserve something 10 times worse than what I had planned for them. They deserve to fail, and fail miserably. But before that happens, I want them to have a taste of their own medicine. Update 5. Today has been an intense day. Today was my mother's birthday. No, better said, the woman does not deserve to be called my mother. Let me rephrase. Today was Solly's birthday. For as long as I can remember, she has always celebrated her birthday the same way. She invites every family member in town to a 100% family gathering with a dramatic presentation of gifts, where the gift giver must give a little speech. Even this year, it did not disappoint. I received the invitation card in the mail 2 days after I confronted them about William's fake family. She invited Al and me to the celebration. This morning, I put on a sleek black dress, and Al wore his suit. I had already told him what I planned to do, and my sweet husband was in complete agreement. Of course, I also told him about the ridiculous response that Will and Solly had given me. When we arrived, most of the family members were surprised to see us, considering that we are still in mourning. We endured the awkward small talk until it was time to present gifts to the so-called honoree. When it was our turn, I gave them our gift, and yes, I put that in quotes for a reason. It was a photo of the house where William had been living since he dropped out of college. I also included documents and details of his grand plan to deceive Will and Solly, making them believe that he had a family. But I didn't stop there. I also included proof of the sale of the very house we were all standing in. I didn't hold back. I laid everything bare. How William had secured the money to pay for his addiction, how he had lied, and how they had chosen to believe him over me. When I finished, Al stepped forward and made it even clearer. He told them, in no uncertain terms, that we were done with them. He told them they could run to their favorite child and deal with the consequences of the truth. Will and Solly burst into tears. But the time for compassion had long passed. Not only had we revealed to everyone who Solly and Will really were, but we also exposed who their beloved son truly was. If you're wondering how it felt, I'll tell you. It felt good. It felt good to confront them and expose their hypocrisy. It felt good to stand up for myself and my family. And it felt good to walk away knowing I was leaving that toxicity behind. Since I started writing this update, I've received several messages, some from my parents, asking us to meet and talk. I haven't responded to them, and I don't plan to. I think we've already said everything that needed to be said. I've blocked them and moved on. I've also received messages from family members. So far, all of them have reached out to offer their condolences for my loss and to tell me that my parents have been complete idiots. It feels good to have people on your side. Update 6. For those who are wondering what happened to my parents and the house, here's the update. I haven't spoken to them, but it's not difficult to find out what's going on since my parents' story has become the talk of the family. They have not lost the house because, obviously, the signature had been forged and the sale that my brother organized was not legal. However, my brother is in trouble for that, but not with my parents. They have not wanted to sue him or press charges because, of course, he is their special son. Still, he has had to enter a rehabilitation program, which is being paid for by my parents. I'm calling them parents here to make it easier to read this, but in truth, they have long since ceased to be that for me. As some people mentioned in my previous post, rehabilitation is part of what the judge ordered to prevent my brother from going to jail. Although my parents did not press charges, the justice system can still pursue criminal charges against him, and they have done so. It's part of the agreement that's been reached. In addition, there's the lawsuit filed by the person who bought the house. This buyer was not at all happy to discover that there was no house and that my brother had taken part of the money. He had only paid for part of the house, but he's now suing. While part of me thinks the buyer was a fool for paying so little, surely thinking it was a bargain, I also believe the lawsuit against my brother is well-deserved. The result is that they've reached an agreement, and, once again, my parents are paying for it. They could let my brother face the consequences of his own actions. They could let him be responsible for his own mess. But no. They have to be there for him, paying for his mistakes, even when they are neither directly responsible nor legally obligated to cover the costs of his mess. But as they've told other relatives, they cannot abandon their son at the lowest moment of his life. I wish karma would hit them harder, so hard that it would bring them back to reality. But seeing this attitude of my parents, I don't believe that even a high-speed train hitting them directly in the face would wake them up from the fantasy world they live in. A world where my brother deserves all the effort, all the money, and all the sacrifices they make for him. Update 7. My parents have had to sell the house, and my brother has probably started using again. Months have passed, and everything has been quiet. That's why I hadn't updated, even though I've received many requests to do so. My brother had left rehab, and as far as I knew, indirectly, everything was normal. However, a couple of months ago, my parents returned home and discovered that they had been robbed. Several valuable things had been taken. It is not difficult to imagine who could have done something like that, and he was not alone. My parents discovered my brother and a couple of his friends loading a car with their things. Thanks to a neighbor's cameras, they have not filed a report with the police about this incident. They have been saying to the family members that, with everything that has happened lately, they can't send him to jail because if someone reports him, he could spend a long time in prison since it wouldn't be his first offense. Even our relatives have told them that they should file the report no matter what, but my parents refuse. They have told them that they shouldn't even be because of the stolen things, but because he would use everything he stole to consume again. But my parents insist on not reporting it, and they want to find him to bring him home again. So my brother has left them with debts and with a ransacked house, which has left them forced to sell it and move to a smaller place. I don't know the place, but I can't imagine anything smaller than my childhood house. We never had much, so our house was always modest. Something interesting for you is that the buyer is the same one my brother tried to scam. You made an offer to my parents, the only one they received, and since this would help them pay off the debt with him, besides the fact that they needed quick money for the bills, they decided to take it. But these are the things that have been happening with my parents. I know this update is a little bitter in certain aspects, and perhaps what I have to tell is not related, but it makes me happy, and I don't want to make another update just to say I'm pregnant. You don't know how happy it makes me, especially after everything we've been through in the last while. Update 8. My parents have sold again and moved out of town because my brother has been sentenced to 15 years in prison. My parents were looking for my brother, even paying a private investigator, but it was difficult to find him. Finally, he was arrested for robbery with a firearm, a weapon he used to shoot the person he robbed in the leg. Luckily, that person did not die because although I do not know him, he does not deserve to carry the consequences of my brother's mistakes. My parents have sold their last house and have moved closer to the place where my brother will serve his sentence. That is honestly a relief for me because with a newborn baby, I am not going to lie, having them away is what is better for all of them. My parents have told their relatives that they are moving because they don't have a good future here anyway, and they want to be close to my brother. It's as if they hope that in 15 years he'll come out reformed, but I'm not going to be the one to destroy their illusions. Maybe he will learn during this time, or perhaps when it is too late. What do you think about this story? Have you ever experienced something similar, or do you know someone who has? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.